Hey guys, I really wanted to look at this video today. This is gonna be done offline, and so let me know what you think about these offline. Um, I just haven't really had a chance to stream the last couple days. I've been really, really busy, and so I'm doing this like before I gotta go to work, and I forgot my glasses, but I could still hear the video, even though I can't really see it very well. So, I just wanted to get in here. There was some updates on the Visa stuff with Steam, or more so Steam, I guess. I haven't watched this video, and there's this second video here that I was thinking about watching, and we'll just bundle it all together. So let's check this out really quick.
President Trump just signed a new executive order, and it could be the biggest news for gamers you haven't heard yet. Games are being censored, not by Steam though, but by the banks that handle the money. This new
Yeah, it
executive
needs to
order is
stop.
the first legal step in stopping this. Recently, if you haven't heard, some games were removed from the Steam store, but this wasn't because of a bug or a
He said some games, but like 16,000 games or more was removed. That's not some. That's a large amount of games that got pulled.
developer's choice. Instead, it happened because a big payment company like MasterCard decided that a few games were a reputational risk. This is a vague rule that lets them pressure a company like Steam to
It's too vague. They only say that because then they could draw the line wherever they feel they can, instead of having a solid foundation of what's right and what's wrong. But anything legal should go through. That's the issue.
remove any games they don't like. As a result, the banks that handle the money for Steam got involved, creating a chain of pressure that led to the games actually being removed. This is a big deal because it
Man.
shows that a third-party company that handles the money, not the government or Steam itself, is now deciding what we can and can't buy. This kind of power is a form of digital censorship, and is especially concerning since a new rule was recently added to Steam's guidelines that gives them the power to remove content that may violate the rules and standards set
Oh
forth.
yeah, I think we saw this on the last video. Content that may violate the rules and standards set forth by Steam's payment processors, meaning MasterCard and Visa, and related card networks and banks or internet network providers, in particular, certain kinds of adult-only content, which adult-only content is still legal,
By our payment processors. The thing is, the Steam
especially if
situation
you're of
is just
age.
one example of a much bigger problem. It's part of a growing
Well,
trend of these payment companies censoring or even debanking anything they don't like. Debanking is when banks or payment companies close accounts or refuse to work with people and businesses for reasons that aren't actually about money. The censorship we're seeing on platforms like Steam is very similar to how banks debank people.
JP Morgan and Bank of America debanked Trump under pressure from Biden admin over January 6th. No way.
The payment
I
processor
do remember people that were involved in the January 6th thing. I know we don't want to get super political on this, but I think Bank of America was giving out people that had paid to go to that event. Uh and that's how they caught a lot of the people that were there at January 6th after the fact.
are essentially saying, if you don't remove this content, we will stop doing business with you, which means you can't get paid. This is a direct financial threat. It's what itch.io stated when they said they had to act urgently to protect the platform's core payment infrastructure. And
Yeah, which is ridiculous because there there's no threat except for the loudmouth people that are trying to get games censored or get games removed. Most of the gamers don't care. They just want to be able to play games and be able to buy whatever games they want if it's legal. I totally understand if games are illegal or made in a non-legal manner, that they need to be removed or they need to be censored in certain ways. But all the games that got removed, to my knowledge, were all legal games that could be on the platform. And so it's a big issue.
also when Valve said if they didn't remove the games, it would prevent customers.
We were recently notified that certain games on Steam may violate the rules and standards set forth by our payment processors and their related card networks and banks. As a result, we are retiring those games from being sold on Steam Store because loss of payment methods would prevent customers from being able to purchase other titles and game content on Steam. We are directly notifying developers of these games and issuing app credits should they have Another game they'd like to distribute on Steam in the future. Holy cow.
from buying games and content across Steam. The White House announcement calls this politicized or unlawful debanking
It is
and highlights
unlawful.
how some financial institutions have restricted access to services on the basis of political or religious beliefs or lawful business activities. So this
Yeah.
isn't just about video games. Something similar has happened to cryptocurrency companies, legal gun stores, and even anime stores. The White House
Really?
announcement points to
Wait, gun stores and stuff too?
so
Sorry.
this isn't just about video games. Something similar has happened to cryptocurrency
Payment processor checkout.com drops by Binance over money laundering compliance concerns.
companies, legal
City to drop policy restricting services to retail clients selling firearms.
gun stores,
What?
and even
Payment processors force Japanese retailer to remove adult games indefinitely? What?
anime stores.
I know
The
they
White House
have
announcement points
a
to
little bit
other
different
examples
rules
as
over
well,
there.
such as when federal regulators suggested banks flag individuals who made transactions related to companies like Cabela's and Bass Pro Shop. These payment networks are
Bro,
essentially the
no
roads of
way.
the digital economy. By controlling these roads, these companies can stop anyone they disagree with from doing business, even if they haven't broken any real laws. So, to fight back against this, President Trump has signed a new executive order called Guaranteeing Fair Banking for All Americans. This is a direct response
Hell yeah. We knew Trump would come through on this.
to what the president's office calls systemic abuses by financial institutions that undermine free expression and economic opportunity.
Should we read this whole thing? As a result, individuals, their businesses, and their families have been subjected to debanking on the basis of their political affiliations, religious beliefs, or lawful business activities, and have suffered frozen payrolls, debt, and crushing interest, and other significant harms to their livelihoods, reputations, and financial well being. Such practices are incompatible with a free society and the principle that the provision of banking services should be based on material, measurable, and justifiable risk. Such practices, when wielded to discriminate against customers and businesses in credit transactions due to their religion, are also unlawful under the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. They further undermine public trust in banking institutions and their regulators, discriminate against political beliefs and free expression of those beliefs, and weaponize a politicized regulatory state.
This new rule tells federal groups that watch over banks to stop using vague reasons like reputational risk in their
Yeah,
guidance and manuals.
it can't
The
be
order
vague
is
anymore.
specific, stating that regulators must remove the use of reputational risk or equivalent concepts that could result in politicized or unlawful debanking. From now on, banks must make their decisions based on clear financial reasons. The order also directs
Ooh.
federal banking regulators to review banks for any past or current policies that encourage politicized or unlawful debanking and to take action, including charging a fine. The ultimate goal of
So hopefully these companies, when they've done that, they can go back and say, look, you did this in the past, you need to fix it. And if they get fined, that will hopefully make it so where they don't want to do that again in the future. Because if this happens again, they should get fined an insane amount, because it's just causing so many issues for legal games, purchasing practices. Like, come on.
this order, as stated by the White House, is to ensure that no American should be denied access to financial services because of their beliefs, affiliations, or political views.
Yeah, constitutionality or statutory protected beliefs. So everything, so it's basically protected to be able to buy these things, and they overstepped.
This is meant to prevent any financial unfair treatment and give fair access to banking for all legal businesses and people. So, how does this new order connect directly to our problem on Steam? This is where the details of how payments work become really important. As Valve confirmed in their response, MasterCard didn't go
1. Customer uses credit card to make purchase. 2. Settles transaction. 3. Submit transaction. Submits transaction. Goes to the bank. Assesses customer account. funds from customer, front thing. So it's a hopefully this truly is what's going to actually happen now instead of what's been happening recently with Steam.
Go directly to Valve and tell them to remove the games. MasterCard communicated with acquiring banks. These are the banks that handle the money for businesses like Steam. MasterCard cited one of its rules, Rule 5.12.7, which says that a business can't process
Whoa.
transactions that may damage the goodwill of the corporation or reflect negatively on the marks. It's
So that's why they got to change it then, right? Because if they don't change it for that's why they have to remove the very vague terms of what could be brand damaging. They need to they basically have to remove that now because if they don't, a merchant must not submit to its acquirer and a customer must not submit to the interchange system. Any transaction that is illegal or in the sole discretion of the corporation may damage the goodwill of the corporation or reflect negatively on the marks. So the corporation considers any of the following activities to be in violation of this rule. The sale or offer of sale of a product or service other than in full compliance with the law than applicable to the acquirer, issuer, merchant, cardholder, cards, or the corporation. So, which all those purchases were legal. So why would they even block that to begin with and opt for games to be removed in the first place?
negatively
I
on
don't know
the
if we should
marks.
read that
It's
whole
important
thing.
to know that Visa has a very similar rule, just showing how this is a widespread issue
Yeah, Visa was just as bad with their terms. It it was it was just as bad. A member not must not use the Visa owned marks in any manner that may bring the Visa owned marks or Visa Inc. or its affiliates into disrepute disrepute in relation to or for the purchase or trade of photographs, video imagery, computer generated images, cartoons, simulation, or any other media or activities, including but not limited to any of the following: child sex abuse. Well, yeah, okay. All these I could see being weird, but I don't think that was in a lot of those games. And if it was in some of them, then yeah, maybe they could have got removed. But I don't think all the games. I think they just lumped pretty much just a large category together and got rid of them.
a very similar rule, just showing how this is
A member that does not comply with these requirements will be subject to non-compliance assessments prescribed under the Visa Integrity Risk Program.
a widespread issue across the payment industry. This is a perfect example of a vague reputational risk clause. MasterCard didn't
Super
have to
vague.
prove the games were illegal, just that they were a risk to their brand. This was in response to a small number of complaints from
We encourage our supporters to email payment processors and call them to stop facilitating payments and profiting from these games on Steam. This week, we released an open letter signed by leading global anti-sexploitation organizations and individuals to senior executives at payment gateway companies, including MasterCard, Visa, and PayPal. Within just a few days, we've seen significant action.
the activist
Man,
group Collective Shout. The acquiring banks,
that
fearing
Collective
that they
Shout
would
needs to
lose their
be
partnership with a major
removed.
payment network, then pressured Valve to remove the games. Valve complied, which is why they weren't fully debanked. So the executive order aims to stop this by forcing financial institutions to justify their decisions based on individual, objective, and risk-based analysis. The key difference is
Wow.
simple. Risk-based analysis is about measurable financial threats. Reputational risk is
Yeah, oh man, they're gonna be crying in a minute, I
about
bet.
feelings and public opinion. The new executive order is designed to stop financial companies from using the second one as an excuse to shut down legal businesses. This could protect game developers from being unfairly censored. So what can we expect now? While this executive order is a major step, it has its limitations. Some might argue that it doesn't mean much because it can't directly regulate companies like MasterCard or Visa. However, the executive order does create a powerful incentive for banks to stop caving to this type of pressure. If an acquiring bank knows that it could be fined by a federal regulator for acting on a reputational risk concern, it's far less
Dang.
likely to do so. This could make the vague rules of payment
Hopefully the vague rules are just they adjust that. So Each federal banking regulator shall conduct a review to identify financial institutions subject to its jurisdiction and that have had any past or current formal or informal policies or practices that require, encourage, or otherwise influence such financial institution to engage in politicized or unlawful debanking, and to take appropriate remedial action to the extent authorized and consistent with applicable law, including levying fines. Federal banking regulators that such federal banking regulators fines has engaged in politicized or unlawful debanking that violates applicable law, including Section 5 of the Federal Trade Commission Act. Yeah, so it sounds like hopefully stuff's going to start turning around and it's not going to get worse.
A reputational risk concern, it's far less likely to do so. This could make the vague rules of payment processors effectively powerless. According to Valve's newest statement, they were pressured by these banks, citing MasterCard's rule.
Yeah, MasterCard. Oh,
Statement,
okay,
they were pressured.
MasterCard did not communicate with Valve directly, despite our request to do so. A Valve representative said MasterCard communicated with payment processors and their acquiring banks. Payment processors communicated this with Valve, and we replied by outlining Steam's policy since 2018 of attempting to distribute games that are legal for distribution. Payment processors rejected this and specifically cited MasterCard's rule.
By these banks,
Risk to the MasterCard brand.
rule. So while Valve was
so very broad still.
formally debanked, they were put in a position where they had to choose between censorship and a massive financial threat. This is the exact thing this executive order is trying to
Yes,
stop. Looking
guaranteed
forward,
fair
though,
banking
this
for all
executive order could
Americans.
pave the way for more changes. We could see new legislation like the Fair Access to Banking Act gain momentum in Congress. This act, which has seen bipartisan support, aims to prevent banks from using subjective.
Banks are now, however, increasingly employing subjective category-based evaluations to deny certain persons access to financial services in response to pressure from advocates from across the political spectrum whose policy objectives are served with banks deny certain customers access to financial services.
Non-financial standards when deciding who to do business with. A new law would have way more power than an executive order. It could directly and legally stop payment networks from denying service based on a business's legal activities or political views. The details of the bill are designed to force this change. For example, it would prevent banks from making decisions based on unfair.
When a bank predicates the access of financial services of a person on factors or information, such as the lawful products a customer manufactures or sells, or all the services the customer provides, other than quantitative impartial risk-based standards, the bank has failed to act consistent with basic principles of sound risk management and failed to provide fair access to financial services. Yeah, them blocking all those games was unfair, and this is outlining that
in
now.
Random standards, a legal way of saying a decision made without a good, clear reason. The bill requires banks to have a written, documented report showing.
Oh dang. When denying any person financial services, the covered bank offers provide written justification to the person explaining the basis for the denial, including any specific laws or regulations the covered bank believes are being violated by the person or customer. So this makes it so they can't use a blanket wide brand damaging rule for them. So that I think is gonna really turn things around. I really hope
analysis
so.
for all decisions. This means they would have to back up their choices with clear, factual information, not vague concerns about their brand. This would be a more permanent solution, like treating these payment companies as essential services. So if the pressure from payment processors start to disappear, the new rule on Steam would become unnecessary and could pave the way for a return to a more
Valve ignores its responsibility with its new Steam content policy.
Hands-off content policy on the platform. So, although the fight to stop censoring games is not over yet, there are some signs it might not last forever.
Sorry about that.
President Trump just signed a.
I hope so, because this is this is a big, uh, I think a big thing in the right direction. I think this is going to move us in a. I just hope stuff starts getting fixed, and I hope they can start adding games back. I didn't play a lot of those games that were on the platform, but I know a lot of other people that do, and I think it was wrong that they got removed. So hopefully this, with what they said, hopefully it makes them basically say, okay, re-add all those games, and then now they have to be very specific when they decline sales. So that's really good. We might look at another video on top of this, but I really appreciate you guys watching, and I just want to keep up to date at least on this topic. I know I'm a little late with this one, but I really appreciate you guys watching. Thank you.